This is the first podcast of Chapter 7, Teaching During Activity. Teachers can perform many functions while students are engaged in a movement task. Some of these functions contribute directly to lesson objectives, some make only an indirect contribution to lesson objectives, and others make absolutely no contribution to lesson objectives. Effective teachers are active teachers who are actively engaged in promoting learning. Active teachers minimize the time they spend on activities that cannot contribute to lesson objectives, and they maximize the time they spend on those activities that can contribute to lesson objectives. As we all know, teaching means telling people what to do. Sometimes I think that's why we all got into teaching. After presenting the content, what happens with the learners? This is the number one problem that beginning teachers have, is watching the students and their responses after they send them out to practice a task. Good teachers have the ability to handle many things at one time. With itness is the ability to be aware at all times what is going on regardless of what you're doing. In other words, having eyes in the back of your head. Overlapping is what we call multitasking, in other words, being able to do a lot of things at the same time and do them well. As it tells you in the book, directly contributing behaviors contribute directly to student learning and to the objectives of your lesson. Indirectly contributing behaviors support learning but do not directly contribute to the student learning or the objectives for that day. Effective teachers are actively engaged in promoting learning all the time. In other words, you always have to be thinking, what am I teaching the students? And that includes on your lesson plans, putting what you're teaching the students in the instructional task. That's what you're trying to do, is engage the students in learning. You want to minimize the time spent on non-content activities such as taking roll, handing out equipment, talking to the other teacher, etc., etc. You want to maximize the time spent on students learning the content and activities, and maximize the time spent on them being physically active in your class. Remember, we want more than 50% of the class to be active at one time. The teaching behaviors listed on the next two slides are going to be talked about in longer detail later on in this slideshow. But directly contributing behaviors are maintaining a safe learning environment, which is your number one priority, clarifying, reinforcing tasks, observing, analyzing student responses, which is a skill that teachers need to have and beginning teachers need to develop, providing feedback to learners, hopefully more specific than general, and changing and modifying tasks as you go along according to the students' responses and their abilities, and maintaining a productive learning environment, making it positive for all students. Some indirect behaviors are participating with students in a game situation, or officiating, or standing on the side and watching during a game situation, dealing with personal student needs such as going to the bathroom or getting water, engaging in off-topic discussions that sometimes can be turned into teachable moments. However, if it's so off-topic that it's not even related, that should be discouraged. Attending to injured athletes is also indirectly contributing. Non-contributing behaviors are fire drills, tornado drills, lockdowns, and so on, talking with visitors, clearing a dog off the field, those kinds of things that you're trying to get things straightened out, and those types of behaviors need to be kept to a minimum. Setting priorities of what to do first, obviously number one is make the environment safe. You should be able to scan the area and make sure that there are no obstructions in the way for any of the students, and making sure that your organizational patterns are safe and the flow of how students move and practice is not going to interfere with other students. You also need to make sure the students understand the task and are engaged in the task the way it was designed, and that they're not trying to do something different or clown around. Observe the whole class responses and adjust the tasks as needed. Check responses continuously. Observe individual performance, of course, is one of our main responsibilities, but still maintain awareness of the whole group while we look at individual performance. All of these functions are interrelated, by the way, and all depend on a teacher's ability to observe and analyze what students are doing. This is hard for beginning teachers to do. You have to develop the skills of observing and analyzing. Observing and analyzing a group is very much harder than observing and analyzing one student or even two students, so that's something you need to work on. Effective teachers anticipate safety problems, and they also teach students to work safely. Experienced teachers teach for safety and also teach for student responsibility for safety. You need to build in safety for all of your tasks. Never allow students to work out of control, because it not only uh, makes it so they don't learn anything, but their fellow classmates are not learning either if they get disrupted. Stop tasks immediately if the conditions become unsafe, and remove the conditions that make a task unsafe. For instance, if it's raining outside and your gymnasium has a leak in the roof, you need to make sure that when the roof starts leaking onto the floor, that is an unsafe situation. So you need to remove the students, stop the tasks if the conditions get worse, try to get it fixed and remove those problems. But if you can't do it, you're going to have to find a plan B for your lesson. As a teacher, you're going to clarify and reinforce tasks for learners. One of the major things you're going to have to learn as a beginning teacher is to hold the students accountable for the focus of the tasks you have given them, and also hold them accountable for performing the task and the goals that you give them to perform. Reinforce the task focus as the students work, and a lot of times we do this through the critical elements. Stop the task, restate and clarify the task if the students are not working with the focus you have given a task. You need to stop them and make sure and reteach the information if they didn't hear it the first time. You can avoid the need for clarifying tasks if the present task that they're working on is stated clearly the first time that you send them out with the directions. This is the end of podcast 1 for chapter 7.